Welcome back to my next Better Call Saul Season 2 episode review video. Before I get into that, though, pretty important, if you aren't caught up to the point where I am and rewatching or watching Better Call Saul, or you're just not entirely sure, then you definitely need to take the initiative and pay attention to the episode's title, which of course I'll mention as well as put in the description. If that happens to be the case, you find that you're not caught up, it would be my recommendation that you don't watch this video any further to avoid any potential spoilers. And I've already watched Better Call Saul all the way through. In fact, as I binged it the first time, I actually caught up with new episodes of Season 6. So Season 6, Episode 4, I caught up to the show when it was airing live. So I did do reviews of Season 6. So if you want to check out those videos, if you've already watched every episode, click right here with about 20 seconds left to go in the video. That'll be my Better Call Saul Season 6 episode playlist. That'll be a link to every video that I did Better Call Saul related, as well as right down here with about 20 seconds left to go in the end screen. That'll be my Breaking Bad playlist. Love Better Call Saul. Love Breaking Bad. Just wanted to rewatch Better Call Saul to see where it ranks on my all-time favorite TV shows of all time, because it's definitely top 12, possibly top 6. We'll see where it stands. But anyway, this will be Better Call Saul Season 2, Episode 9. The title of this episode is called Nailed. And this will be my review, reaction, recap after just finishing watching the episode. So we have a blue sedan. It's parked behind a decaying billboard to hide from passing motorists. And then nearby we have Mike wearing a ski mask. He's hammering metal stakes and hangs a pulley to run a cable through it. Meanwhile, the driver, I think his name is Jimenez, drives down the road in a Regalo Helado truck. Seconds before the truck passes the billboard, Mike yanks on the cable, dragging the garden hose he prepared earlier into the middle of the road. The truck's tires blow upon hitting the strip, causing it to swerve off the road and drive into a ditch. Jimenez, I think his name is that, grabs his gun from the glove compartment. He gets a glimpse of the car parked behind the billboard when Mike suddenly puts a gun to the back of his head. And Mike disarms this driver, ties him up, and blindfolds him, and then gags him with duct tape. He then breaks out an electric saw and begins slicing into the truck's tires. Eventually, he finds $250,000 in cash stuffed into one of them, and Mike loads the money plus his improvised trap into the trunk of his car and drives off. We have Chuck getting dressed and heads downstairs where Howard is waiting for him. They are scheduled along with Kevin and Paige to appear before the New Mexico State Banking Board to get final approval on Mesa Verde's new branch. Despite Howard's offer to attend the meeting alone, Chuck insists on coming along. From the park across the street, Jimmy watches the two drive off, then proceeds to run into Chuck's house with a stack of files. At the courthouse, Chuck almost has an EMS attack while walking through the metal detector, but manages to keep his composure. Before the baking board, Kevin delivers an opening statement in support of Mesa Verde's application. His argument is cut off when an aide delivers a file to the board's commissioner. On request of the board, Chuck recites the address of the proposed branch at 1216 Rosella Drive, the fake address created by Jimmy in the previous episode. The board, as well as Kevin and Paige, insist that the address is wrong, but Chuck initially refuses to believe them. The discrepancy causes the hearing to be canceled, leading to a 6-week postponement. Upon returning home, Chuck frantically sifts through the paperwork. As he finds that all the files contain the 1261 address, he realizes Jimmy was behind this. Doesn't have any proof, but he realizes Jimmy's behind it. That night, Mike sits in his car outside Hector's ice cream parlor. He observes Hector throwing a tantrum upon learning about the hit on his cash shipment. Later, Mike goes into a bar with his newly acquired money, and in a moment of just a moment of being a nice guy, he decides to order a round of drinks for everybody in the bar. As Kim and Jimmy work to set up their office space, she gets a call from Paige. Mesa Verde has dropped HHM and is back in Kim's hands, and Chuck is ready to hand over the files. Jimmy does accompany Kim to Chuck's house, but discovers that his key no longer fits in the locks. Ernesto opens the door and tells them that Chuck has changed the locks. Chuck is in his study as Jim and Kim arrive, and he accuses Jimmy of sabotaging him, and then kind of laying out all the events of how Jimmy forged the Mesa Verde documents to humiliate him at the hearing. And then as Jimmy, kind of says ignorance, like, what are you talking about, Chuck? Chuck gives Kim an ultimatum. She must make a full disclosure to Kevin and Paige or risk disbarment. Much to the brother's surprise, Kim sides with Jimmy. She points out that Chuck has no evidence other than knowing his brother for his entire life, which is merely, it's kind of irrelevant. It is more likely that Chuck, working for hours on end at a typewriter by a lantern light, made a mistake and is now trying to blame Jimmy for it. Kim states that Jimmy behaves the way he does because Chuck has always judged him for his past and never wanted him to succeed. After Jimmy helps Kim move the Mesa Verde files back to his car, she suddenly hits him several times on the shoulder. She is quite aware that Chuck's claims are true. Then she angrily tells him to just drive. Some days later, Jimmy and his camera crew visit a local elementary school, now accompanied by a makeup artist. So we have camera guy, sound guy, and makeup lady. Once recess is over, they set up on the playground to film Jimmy standing in front of American flag. The shoot is interrupted when the school administrators threaten to remove them for trespassing. Jimmy is able to charm them, claiming he's filming a documentary on the songwriter Rupert Holmes, who he claims attended this very school. Meanwhile, Mike is having breakfast at that diner that he's always at. His mood changes when he gets a phone call from Nacho, who demands that Mike meet him right away. Nacho relays how Hector's mule got hit by a hijacker who took $250,000. Nacho states his suspicions that Mike is behind the hit. The driver was found hogtied on the side of the road without a single mark on him, and Nacho claims that he only knows one individual who would rip off drug money but leave a witness alive. Only one criminal who is hesitant to kill, Mike. Nacho doesn't believe it possible for Mike to have figured out the truck and the location of the money all by himself, but Mike assures him that the driver had nothing to do with the hit and he won't recognize him since Mike wore a ski mask and didn't say a single word. As Nacho prepares to leave, Mike asks him why wasn't the robbery in the papers, and Nacho realizes that Mike wanted the police to find the truck and launch an investigation into Hector Salamaco, hopefully linking it back to Hector Salamaco. And Nacho is furious because anything that goes to Hector goes back to him, essentially. He would get caught up in the investigation. He comes close to pulling his gun on Mike, but Mike tells him that he's done dealing with Hector Salamaco. Nacho explains that a good Samaritan came upon the truck driver and cut him loose. He immediately called Hector Salamaco, who came out with his men and cleaned up the whole scene, shot the good Samaritan in the face, and buried him in the desert. And Mike is unsettled about this information, coming to realization that his need to one-up Hector Salamaco got an innocent bystander murdered. Meanwhile, Jimmy, spending the night at Kim's place, prepares to go to sleep, and Kim indirectly tells Jimmy to make sure he's covered his tracks well enough for Chuck to find no evidence about his involvement, and Jimmy gets back up and leaves. Jimmy arrives late at the night copy shop, and the copy shop, not coffee shop, and sees Ernesto ask Lance, the guy that was here before getting into his car and driving away. It is only a matter of time before Ernesto were to return with Chuck, so Jimmy enters the shop and approaches Lance and explains that what's going on and how Chuck will soon be coming in to investigate. As he elaborates, Jimmy produces money from his wallet, offering a bribe. Lance is reluctant at first, but happily agrees to lie after Jimmy assures him that he won't get in trouble with the police. For another $200, Lance furthermore agrees to erase the security footage from the surveillance camera. The bribe complete, Jimmy waits in the shadows across the street for Chuck's arrival. Minutes later, he and Ernesto arrive, so he got out of there just in time. Chuck, who leaves his space blanket in the car as he enters the shop, approaches Lance and inquires about Jimmy. Lance pretends not to know about him, and Chuck promptly calls him out for lying since Lance already told Ernesto the exact opposite. Chuck becomes increasingly agitated as he is exposed to the lights and the copy equipment. When he snaps at another customer seeking help, Lance tells Ernesto to remove Chuck from the store since he's causing a disturbance. Eventually, the electromagnetic fields prove too much for Chuck to take. He collapses. He hits his head on the counter. So you start to collapse and then bashed his head and falls to the floor. Across the street, a horrified Jimmy silently watches Ernesto and Lance gather around Chuck, pleading that someone call 911. And that's what ends this episode of Better Call Saul. So really good episode right before the finale of season 2. I was a big fan of it. A lot of good performances in this episode. I'm going to give the episode a 9.0 out of 10. And then as far as the character of the episode, I mean, you have Kim Wexler, you have Chuck, and you have Mike. They all did great. Obviously, Jimmy's the character of every episode. For the most part, there might be like one episode a season, if any, that he might not be the character of the episode. So that's why I pick other characters besides Jimmy, otherwise known as Gene, otherwise known as Saul Goodman. So they all did good. 9.0 out of 10. So you've heard everything that I have to say. Now it's your turn. If you're a fan of Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, or El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie, and you want to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, please don't forget to help smash the like button. Share this video with a friend. Put this video on any one of your social media platforms. Don't forget to sound off in the comment section about what your thoughts are on this episode of Better Call Saul. What would you rate it? And who would you choose as a character of the episode besides Jimmy? Remember, I'll put my Better Call Saul Season 6 reviews right there, since I did review them when the show was airing. And then last but certainly not least, don't forget to hit that sub button. You're watching the video anyway. Subscribe to the channel, join the team, show your damn support, and be a part of something special. And you never know what you're going to see on JDEV TV.